There are years in archaeology when discoveries arrive slowly, quietly, one fragment at a time. And then there are years when the past seems to surge upward all at once, as if something buried for ages finally decides to return. The year 2025 was one of those moments. Around the world, in places that shared no culture and no era, pieces of a forgotten story began to rise together. At first they looked unrelated. A Roman woman sealed in a coffin that had not been opened in 17 centuries. Cities hidden beneath the Amazon canopy. A sunken Egyptian harbour still guarding the ritual tools of its priests. A Bronze Age settlement on the steppe where metallurgy flourished long before anyone expected. A Renaissance ship lying upright on the sea floor. And stone tools found along a Turkish shoreline that should not exist according to any accepted migration timeline. Different continents, different civilizations, different thousands of years. But together they form a pattern. They point to a human story far older, more complex, and more resilient than our timelines suggest. A story where people were not wandering in isolation, but developing engineering, astronomy, architecture, and urban planning in places long dismissed as empty, primitive, or culturally stagnant. A story where landscapes changed so dramatically that entire chapters of human history vanished beneath jungles, deserts, oceans, and volcanic ash. 2025 forced archaeologists to face a difficult truth. Much of our past is missing, not because it never existed, but because time, catastrophe, and shifting environments erased the evidence. Forests grew over cities. Seas swallowed land. Ash sealed entire rooms. And for generations we looked in the wrong places. But finally, new technologies swept aside the veil. LiDAR peeled away rainforests. Underwater drones mapped drowned coastlines. Ground scanners traced the faint outlines of ancient lives. And suddenly, fragments from every corner of the world began pointing toward the same unsettling idea. Humanity has risen, fallen, and reinvented itself far more often than we ever imagined. These discoveries do not rewrite a single chapter. They demand that we rethink the entire book, and the first clue comes from a landscape that should not exist at all, a place where waves uncovered stone tools that force us to reconsider how our ancestors first entered Europe. Before we press on, tell me where you are listening from. I always enjoy seeing those comments. In a way, they feel like another kind of discovery. Modern voices from every corner of the world tracing these ancient stories together. And as always, the images here simply help set the atmosphere. Thank you truly for being part of this journey. The first discovery takes us to a shoreline that millions of tourists visit every year, unaware of what lies beneath the waves. It begins with a set of stones that forced scientists to confront an impossible idea, that the sea dividing two continents was once a bridge that connected them. Along the western coast of Turkey, the sea today appears eternal. Islands rise from blue water. Fishing boats slip across small waves, and the Aegean looks as if it has always separated Europe from Anatolia. But the tools uncovered along this coastline told a different story. They pointed toward a time when this sea was not a sea at all, when the Aegean was not a barrier, but a broad land bridge, and when early humans moved across a landscape that has completely vanished. The revelation surfaced quietly. A survey team from Hacettepe University and Ankara University walked the eroded edges of the Ayvalık district, expecting little more than scattered pottery or familiar traces of ancient fishing activity. Instead, they found stone tools lying in clusters across exposed bedrock and weathered channels. Hand axes, cleavers, and large flakes rested exactly where they had last been dropped. Their shapes were unmistakable. These tools were crafted using the levallois technique, a sophisticated method associated with Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens during the Middle Paleolithic. The shock came from their location. Levallois tools are typically found deep inland, in caves or long-term habitation sites. They are rarely found on beaches because early people did not live by the water at that time. Yet here they were, scattered across 10 different sites stretching along the modern coastline. The implication was simple but profound. If these tools were made on dry land between 300,000 and 50,000 years ago, then the Aegean Sea was not a sea. It was a landscape. A land bridge. Imagining this lost world requires discarding the familiar map of the Mediterranean. Instead of islands floating in water, think of them as hills rising from a broad, fertile plain. Lowlands stretched where the sea now lies, and rivers once cut through valleys that today sit beneath hundreds of feet of salt water. Large herbivores migrated across these plains, followed by predators and by humans who track the movement of game and the availability of fresh water. This changes everything about how early humans reached Europe. For decades, scholars debated whether early hominins made their way north through the Caucasus or ventured west along coastal routes. Some even suggested that ancient people had developed boats far earlier than previously believed. But the Levallois tools of Ivalique told a simpler story. The journey into Europe did not require ships, it required walking. This realization resolves several archaeological puzzles. Stone tools found on islands like Crete and Naxos were much older than expected, leading some researchers to speculate about early maritime cultures. But if these islands were once hills on a land bridge, then no boats were necessary. Early humans lived, hunted, and crafted tools on a landscape that later sank beneath rising seas. The land bridge theory also reshapes our understanding of genetic exchange. If Anatolia and southern Europe were connected for much of the Pleistocene, then populations moved freely across this corridor, sharing technologies and mixing genetically in ways that earlier models failed to capture. It was not two isolated zones, but one continuous territory. The tragedy is that most of this territory is gone. At the end of the last ice age, melting glaciers poured water into the oceans. Coastlines retreated, valleys drowned, campsites, hunting grounds, and migration routes vanished beneath rising seas. The tools discovered in 2025 represent only what remained on the highest ridges of this ancient plain, the last fragments left above water when the world warmed. The real heart of the land bridge, the places where people lived for thousands of years, now lies deep beneath the Aegean. This has implications far beyond Turkey. Submerged landscapes are scattered across the world, from Doggerland in northern Europe to Sunda in Southeast Asia and Beringia between Siberia and Alaska. These drowned worlds hold clues about migration, adaptation, and survival. But unlike caves or desert sites, they are deeply inaccessible, buried under sediment and hundreds of feet of water. The Aegean discovery is a reminder that our current map is temporary. Coastlines move, seas rise, landscapes vanish, and with them, entire chapters of human history disappear. There is another layer to this story. If early humans moved across the Aegean plain, their presence may have been far more substantial than a few scattered tools can reveal. Campsites would have lined riverbanks. Shelters built with wood and fibre would have stood near freshwater sources, but organic materials rarely survive underwater. What remains are stone tools, the most durable artifacts left behind after geological catastrophes. The existence of this land bridge suggests that early humans were highly adaptive. They moved into new territories, tracked animal herds, and adjusted to changing environments. They were not confined to a single region, but operated across vast, interconnected landscapes. And when the land bridge vanished, their descendants adapted again, shifting into mountainous terrain or moving deeper into the mainlands of Europe and Anatolia. This resilience is a recurring theme in the discoveries of 2025. Whether in rainforests, deserts, or coastal plains, people found ways to thrive in diverse and challenging environments. Innovation was not the privilege of a single civilization or era. It was a human constant. The lost Aegean land bridge also offers a striking parallel to discoveries in other regions where landscapes have changed dramatically. In the next part of this documentary, we move from a drowned world to a world hidden beneath dense jungle. If the sea can erase a land bridge, the forest can swallow entire cities. What the Aegean discovery hints at with scattered tools, the Amazon reveals on a monumental scale. Beneath the canopy lies a network of cities and engineered landscapes that challenge our assumptions about where complex civilization began. To understand what rose and fell in the rainforest, we must look not at the shoreline, but at the deep interior of the largest green expanse on Earth. We now turn to the Amazon, where LIDAR scans uncovered settlements that redefine what we thought was possible in one of the most challenging environments on the planet. For centuries, however, the Amazon fooled us. It helps to imagine the forest not as a living ocean of trees, but as a curtain. A dense, towering veil that hides everything beneath it. For centuries, this curtain has shaped our assumptions. Historians and archaeologists believed that complex societies could not survive long-term in such an unforgiving environment. The soil is poor, rainfall is erratic, and vegetation grows so fast that structures are swallowed almost as soon as they are abandoned. Any large settlement, it was thought, would collapse quickly under ecological pressure. But LIDAR technology has changed that belief forever. In 2025, scans over the Upano Valley in Ecuador revealed a landscape that should not exist by any conventional model. When the vegetation was digitally stripped away, the forest floor lit up with geometric precision. Thousands of rectangular earth platforms appeared. Straight roadways connected settlement clusters stretching for miles. Central plazas, terraces, canals, and agricultural fields formed a pattern too deliberate to ignore. The scans showed more than 6,000 engineered platforms arranged across more than 100 square miles. These platforms, built from compacted earth, formed the foundations of homes and ceremonial buildings long since reclaimed by the jungle. Yet their structure was unmistakably human. Many were 40 feet wide and 10 feet high, engineered to lift architecture above the flood-prone valley floor. This was not a single settlement. It was an urban network. Archaeologists identified two main phases of occupation. The first belonged to the Kilamopi culture around 500 BC. The second, more expansive phase belonged to the Upano culture, flourishing until around AD 600. Combined, these groups built and inhabited the region for more than 1,000 years. Their world was not a scattering of isolated villages. It was a system of interconnected communities, unified by shared architecture, coordinated labor, and advanced environmental management. One of the most striking features is the infrastructure that linked these settlements. Straight roads as wide as 30 feet ran across the landscape, cutting through hills, crossing valleys, and connecting residential, ceremonial, and agricultural zones. These were not footpaths. They were engineered highways capable of supporting heavy traffic. Their construction required digging through elevation changes, infilling low areas, and shaping the land with precision typically associated with classical civilizations. Between the settlements lay extensive agricultural fields supported by canals and drainage ditches. In a region known for extreme rainfall, water control was essential. The Upano people engineered systems that not only prevented flooding, but distributed water where it was needed for crops like maize and manioc. They shaped an environment that scholars once considered impossible to tame. Population estimates suggest that between 10,000 and 30,000 people lived in the Upano Valley at its peak. To put that in perspective, this is comparable to the population of Roman London. It is the scale of an ancient city. And yet until 2025, there was no trace of it on any map. Why did it remain hidden for so long? The answer lies in the building material. Unlike the Maya or the Inca, who built in stone, The Upano peoples constructed with earth and wood. Over centuries, the jungle crushed wooden structures and spread its roots through every exposed surface. Unlike stone temples that pierced through vegetation, earthen platforms blended into the hills, becoming indistinguishable from natural landscape features. Without LiDAR, they were invisible. The revelation of these mega-settlements forces a reassessment of Amazonian history. It challenges the old belief that large-scale societies could not exist in the rainforest. Instead, it shows that Amazonian cultures engineered their environment with sophistication equal to their counterparts in Mesoamerica and the Andes. More importantly, it suggests that the Amazon basin was capable of supporting complex societies long before European contact. It hints at networks of exchange, shared knowledge, and cultural development that stretched across the region. Far from being untouched wilderness, the rainforest may have been a mosaic of agricultural zones, urban centers, and transportation corridors. The Upano Valley proves that the Amazon was not a barrier to civilization, but a cradle for it. It forces us to abandon the idea of the pristine wilderness and see the jungle for what it truly was: a garden, cultivated by millions. But earth was not the only element our ancestors mastered. While the Upano built up to escape the mud, another civilization, thousands of miles to the north, did something even more audacious. They didn't just build homes to survive the rainforest, they engineered the very veins of the jungle itself. We leave the city of Earth to uncover a mystery of fluid dynamics. A place where the engineering is so advanced, it suggests that the masters of the rainforest didn't just adapt to their environment, they controlled it. When most people imagine the Maya, they picture towering pyramids, broad stone plazas, astronomical temples, and intricate calendars carved into limestone. They imagine the classic period, the age of Tikal, Calakmul, Copan, and Palenque. Yet recent excavations pointed to something far older and far more unexpected. Long before the classic Maya built their monumental cities, another society had already mastered the engineering principles that later civilizations refined. This early Maya world did not leave behind massive stone monuments. Its constructions were more delicate, more vulnerable to time and erosion. But what they built was no less sophisticated. In some ways, it was more impressive. These early architects solved environmental problems that the classic Maya would later refine, but they solved them centuries earlier than anyone believed. The discovery began in the region of northern Guatemala, where archaeologists were mapping a cluster of pre-classic sites, including Cambriol, Los Agujeros, and Panal. From the surface, these sites looked like nothing, low mounds covered in soil, vegetation, and tree roots. But LiDAR scans peeled back the canopy to reveal a triad of settlements connected by causeways, ceremonial spaces, and engineered landscapes. The most astonishing revelation was found at Cambriol. There, archaeologists uncovered a canal system lined with stucco plaster. This was not a simple ditch for drainage. It was a deliberately engineered hydraulic network capable of directing, controlling, and filtering water during the region's extreme rainy seasons. The canal extended from a large reservoir beside a palace-like structure and fed downward through a series of channels that ran along the city's facade. The plaster lining revealed an industrial process that required significant labour. Producing lime plaster in the ancient world demanded cutting timber, burning limestone at high temperatures, and applying the mixture before it cooled. Creating a canal system of this scale meant coordinated labour and deep understanding of water dynamics in tropical environments. The implications were profound. For decades, scholars believed that the Maya did not master such hydraulic systems until the Classic period around AD 250 to AD 900. Yet this canal at Cambriol dated to around 800 BC. That is nearly 1,000 years earlier than expected. Cambriol's canals also served multiple functions. They managed stormwater during the 6-month rainy season, protecting elite precincts from erosion. They likely filtered water into reservoirs for dry season use, and they helped maintain sanitation around ceremonial areas, preventing stagnant pools that would attract disease. This was engineering, not survival. It was planning, not improvisation. Cambriol was not isolated. Nearby Los Agujeros revealed a different kind of innovation. Archaeologists discovered 2 stone sculptures depicting an ancestral couple, a male and female pair, seated with symbolic gestures. These figures appeared to represent a founding lineage, suggesting that early Maya religion already incorporated ancestor veneration, kinship, and dynastic legitimacy. The concept of rulership connected to divine or ancestral authority did not suddenly emerge in later Maya history. It was rooted in these early societies. Even more striking was the presence of an E-group. E-groups are early astronomical complexes used to track the solstices and equinoxes. By observing the sunrise across aligned platforms and pyramids, early Maya priests could calibrate their calendar and mark the passage of seasons. The presence of such a complex at Los Agujeros, dating to the pre-classic era, shows that early Maya had already formalized their understanding of the cosmos. This means the intellectual foundation for Maya astronomy, agriculture, and ritual organization predates the classic era by centuries. Taken together, Cambriol, Los Agujeros, and Panau formed an interconnected system. Their plazas, causeways, and shared architectural patterns suggest political coordination and ceremonial integration. They were not isolated villages. They were components of a single regional engine, a proto-state managing resources, trade, and ritual life long before the first great Maya city rose. These findings challenge long-held assumptions about the Americas. They suggest that complexity did not suddenly erupt from nowhere around AD 250. Instead, the classic Maya inherited a deep tradition of architectural, astronomical, and hydraulic knowledge. Their achievements were not spontaneous. They were built on foundations laid long before. More importantly, these discoveries align with a broader pattern seen in 2025 discoveries across the world. They reveal early societies confronting environmental challenges, not with improvisation but with engineering. Whether controlling water in the Guatemalan rainforest or navigating a drowned landscape in the Aegean, ancient people repeatedly demonstrated ingenuity that modern models underestimated. The discoveries at Cambriol also force a re-evaluation of pre-classic abandonment patterns. If these early Maya were so advanced, why did many pre-classic centers decline around 150 BC? The reasons remain debated. Some scholars suggest environmental stress, others propose political shifts, and still others point to changing trade networks. But the 2025 findings show that this decline was not due to technological backwardness. It was part of a cycle seen across multiple world regions, where early complexity rose, fell, and was replaced by new cultural formations. The early Maya did not vanish. Their knowledge did not disappear. It evolved into the classic civilizations that would later dominate the region. The canals of Cambriol, like the earth platforms of the Upano Valley or the stone tools of the Aegean plain, represent only one chapter in a much larger story of human innovation. The past is deeper than we thought, and the patterns linking these discoveries are becoming harder to ignore. From the engineered waterways of Cambriol, we now shift to a very different landscape, a vast open steppe where wind, grass, and horizon blend into a continuous expanse. Here, in a region long associated with nomadic herders, archaeologists discovered something unexpected. A city, a center of metallurgy, a place where technology, trade, and cultural exchange flourished on a scale no one imagined for the Bronze Age. It is in this steppe that the next part of our journey unfolds, revealing a forgotten urban world, built by people who were never supposed to build cities at all. Across the windswept steppe of Central Asia, the horizon stretches in every direction like an endless ocean of grass. For thousands of years, this region has been viewed through a single lens. It is the land of nomads, a place where people followed herds, lived in tents, and left little behind. The steppe was assumed to be the opposite of civilization. It was mobility over settlement, movement over permanence, improvisation over architecture. But the discovery of Semiarca challenged all of these assumptions. In 2025, archaeologists excavating a site overlooking the Irtysh River uncovered the foundations of a city that should not exist in this landscape. The settlement sat on a high promontory split by 7 deep ravines, a natural fortress shaped by ancient erosion. From this height, the inhabitants could control ships and rafts travelling along the river routes. They could see caravans approaching from the north and south. It was a position chosen with strategic intent, not the whim of wandering herders. The first clues came from pottery. Most of the ceramics belonged to the Alexeyevka Sargari culture, a group associated with settled communities. But interspersed within the local pottery were fragments from the Chirik Rabat culture, a group known to originate from the forest regions far to the north. This mingling of styles suggested a meeting place, a crossroads where forest people and steppe people gathered. Trade was not a peripheral activity here. It was the lifeblood of the city. Yet the most extraordinary evidence emerged from the metallurgical remains. Semiarca was a centre of bronze production. Chemical analysis of slag, crucibles, and broken tools revealed that smiths in this city used a technique known as co-smelting. Instead of mixing copper and tin after smelting, they heated ores containing both elements together to create an alloy with a consistent tin content of up to 12%. This level of precision required expertise, experimentation, and a controlled industrial process. It was not a skill learned by accident, it was a craft mastered by specialists. These metallurgists were not farmers who smelted bronze in their spare time. They were full-time artisans supported by the labour of others. The presence of workshops, furnaces, and waste piles implies organised production. Bronze from Semiarca was likely traded along the river routes, exchanged for furs, timber, honey, and other goods brought by northern traders. This exchange forged economic bonds that extended across the region. The architecture of the settlement was equally impressive. Walls and structures made from stone and packed earth formed a network of buildings that required coordinated construction. The settlement was not a temporary gathering place, but a city built to last. Excavations revealed storage areas, living quarters, and ceremonial structures, each designed with purpose. Yet one detail puzzled researchers. For a city of its size and importance, Semiarca contained relatively little household debris. There were fewer broken pots, discarded bones, and everyday refuse than expected. This led to a surprising hypothesis. Semiarca may have been a seasonal city. During the warmer months, populations may have swelled as groups from across the steppe gathered for trade fairs, metal production, and festivals. The city would have been alive with activity, music, and commerce. But when winter returned and temperatures plunged, the population likely retreated to smaller, more sheltered settlements, leaving Semiarca to stand silent until the next season. This would explain both the scale of the city and the scarcity of long-term refuse. If this theory is true, Semiarca represents a hybrid form of civilization. It was urban, but not permanently occupied. It was planned, but flexible. It was complex, but adapted to the rhythms of the steppe. It challenges the notion that nomadic societies lacked the capacity or desire to build cities. Instead, it shows that they built them when circumstances required it, when trade or ritual demanded a central gathering place. Semiarca also forces a reconsideration of Bronze Age Central Asia as a whole. For decades, focus has remained on the great civilizations of the Near East, South Asia, and China. but steppe cultures played a vital role in connecting these regions. They were intermediaries, traders, innovators, and sometimes disruptors. Cities like Semiarca reveal how ideas and materials moved across continents long before the Silk Road became formalized. The position of the city is telling. It sits above the Irtysh River, a waterway that links the steppe to the forests of Siberia and the lowlands of Kazakhstan. This made Semiarca a gatekeeper. Goods moving north or south passed beneath its walls. The city could tax, protect, or control this flow. It functioned as both marketplace and fortress, both industrial hub and cultural center. The discovery also highlights how fragile our understanding of ancient history can be. A single excavation can overturn decades of assumptions. For too long, the steppe was viewed as a blank space between empires, a region defined by absence rather than presence. Semiarca reveals the opposite. It shows a dynamic, interconnected world where innovation flourished on its own terms. At its peak, the city would have echoed with the sounds of smiths striking bronze, traders shouting prices, children running among the terraces, and visitors arriving from distant lands. The steppe was not empty. It was alive with exchange, craftsmanship, and human ambition. The patterns revealed in Semiarca mirror patterns seen in discoveries across 2025. They show that complex societies arose in environments long considered marginal. They demonstrate that ancient peoples adapted their world in diverse ways. And they prove that organization, planning, and specialized labor were far more widespread in the ancient world than previously assumed. But if Semiarca reveals the scale of human innovation in one of the world's harshest landscapes, the next discovery reveals something even more intimate. A single life preserved with extraordinary care. A young woman placed inside a sealed stone coffin nearly 16 centuries ago, her jewelry, clothing, and possessions arranged exactly as they were on the day of her burial. From the vastness of the steppe, we now move into the quiet, enclosed space of a Roman sarcophagus, sealed in lead and untouched until 2025. In the ancient Roman world, death was rarely gentle. Most burials collapsed, decayed, or were plundered across centuries. Even in elite tombs, time eventually won. Wood rotted, cloth vanished, jewelry was stolen, bones scattered. What we typically recover from a Roman grave is not a life, but the faint outline of one. Yet during a recent excavation in Hungary, archaeologists opened a sarcophagus that defied this pattern entirely. What they uncovered was a world preserved in extraordinary detail. The coffin was carved from limestone and sealed with a thick sheet of lead, pressed and hammered into place with extraordinary care. This act, 2,000 years ago, created an airtight chamber that no water, air, or insects could penetrate. When the team finally pried the lid open for the first time since the late Roman period, they were staring at a moment frozen in time. Inside lay the remains of a young woman, likely in her early 20s. The skeleton was complete, untouched, and surrounded by artifacts that remained exactly where her mourners had placed them. The details were almost unsettling in their clarity. Gold jewelry still rested around her neck and wrists. A bone hairpin lay near her skull, just as it had when her elaborate hairstyle was arranged for the final time. 2 glass vessels, astonishingly intact, stood beside her head. Roman glass almost always shatters under soil pressure, but these vessels survived perfect and unbroken. Their preservation hinted at something more. They were likely used to hold perfumed oils poured during her funeral ceremony. Based on residue still clinging to the inside walls, analysts believe these oils may have come from distant regions, including Arabia and North Africa, where frankincense and myrrh were cultivated. Each scent was part of a ritual intended to guide her spirit safely into the afterlife. But the most remarkable find was her clothing. Fragments of fabric survived only because the lead coffin created an environment where organic matter decomposed extremely slowly. Under the microscope, archaeologists identified threads of gold woven directly into the garment. This was not a common Roman textile. It was a luxury item reserved for the wealthy, a sign of high status even in a frontier province like Pannonia. The clothing alone suggested that she came from an elite family connected to the administrative or military class stationed along the Danube frontier. A quincum, the Roman settlement near today's Budapest, was a layered world. Soldiers, traders, artisans, and local elites lived side by side along the edge of the empire. It was a place where Roman luxury collided with military discipline and the unpredictable threats of neighboring tribes. Inside the sarcophagus, archaeologists also found something unusual: 140 bronze coins. Most Roman burials contain only a single coin or a few placed as a symbolic offering to the ferryman of the underworld. But this many coins indicated a different ritual. Perhaps a purse was buried with her, or perhaps her family believed that being generous in the afterlife would secure her safe passage more strongly. It may also represent a unique Pannonian variant of Roman funerary tradition. Chemical analysis of her bones will reveal more. Isotope studies can determine where she grew up based on the water she drank as a child. Preliminary results suggest she may not have been local. She could have been from Italy, Gaul, or even the Eastern Mediterranean, having travelled along the vast Roman road network before settling near the Danube. DNA analysis may eventually reveal her ancestry, diet, and possible health conditions. Yet beyond the scientific value, the sarcophagus offered something rare in archaeology: a personal story. Unlike abandoned cities, collapsed temples, or submerged harbours, this burial belonged to an individual. Her life, though unknown, left behind a human presence we can still sense. Her jewellery suggests she lived in comfort. Her clothing implies wealth. Her burial shows care, respect, and sorrow. Someone mourned her enough to guard her body against time itself. Her existence paints a different picture of frontier Rome. Instead of a bleak military outpost, it was a thriving place where families lived, where wealth circulated, where fashion travelled across continents, and where individuals from distant provinces came to build new identities. The discovery also echoes a larger theme emerging across 2025's archaeological breakthroughs. While technology like LiDAR and underwater drones reveal landscapes and cities on a massive scale, there is equal power in the delicate recovery of a single life. Each artifact in the coffin is a fragment of a world that was never meant to survive. And yet it did, held together by stone, lead, and human intention. But even the most carefully preserved tomb does not compare to what lies at the bottom of the sea. If a lead-sealed coffin can safeguard a single life for nearly 2,000 years, then what happens when an entire city sinks beneath the waves, sealed by mud, silt, and catastrophe? The answer lies off the coast of Egypt, where archaeologists uncovered one of the most extraordinary underwater finds of the year: a colossal quartzite sphinx. Ritual objects last touched by priests of Osiris, remains of temples swallowed by a geological disaster, and a sunken metropolis that once hosted one of the most sacred ceremonies in the ancient world. From the quiet interior of a Roman sarcophagus, we now descend into the flooded ruins of Canopus, a place where both devotion and destruction shaped what survived. The Mediterranean coast of Egypt has always been a place where land and water negotiate with one another. Rivers shift, deltas wander, and ancient cities sometimes lie only inches above disaster. One such city was Canopus, a once vibrant religious centre near the mouth of the Nile. In its day, it was a place of festivals, temples, revelry, and devotion. But during a recent underwater survey, Canopus revealed itself in a way that stunned even veteran archaeologists. They found a sphinx. Not a small sculpture or a fragmented idol, but a colossal quartzite monument bearing the cartouche of Ramses II. Quartzite is one of the hardest stones worked in the ancient world. It required specialized tools, immense labor, and exceptional skill to shape. Even the Egyptians, masters of stone carving, rarely used it for large monuments because of the difficulty involved. Yet here it was, resting on its side on the seafloor, its polished surface glowing beneath beams of artificial light. The Sphinx was only part of the story. Around it, divers uncovered a collection of ritual objects connected to one of the most sacred events in the ancient Egyptian calendar, the Mysteries of Osiris. This ceremony reenacted the death and resurrection of the god every year. It involved processions, offerings, music, and symbolic rebirth. While ancient texts described the rituals, archaeologists had never recovered the specific tools used during the ceremonies. Until now, divers retrieved bronze and silver ladles used to pour libations over statues of the god. Preserved offering tables still held the hardened remains of ancient food, offerings that once fed the divine image of Osiris. And most striking of all, they discovered objects known as Osiris beds. These were stone or gold molds shaped like the outline of the god himself. During the festival, priests filled these molds with soil and grain. After watering them, the grain sprouted to form a living symbol of Osiris reborn. Each sprouting mold represented life emerging from death, echoing the annual flooding of the Nile. The presence of these beds in a sunken temple was nothing short of extraordinary. They offered a direct, almost tactile connection to a ritual that blended agriculture, mythology, and cosmic symbolism. But the city surrounding these objects told a darker story. Canopus was destroyed by a phenomenon known as liquefaction. When a powerful earthquake struck the Nile Delta, the soft water-saturated earth beneath the city lost its strength. Solid ground transformed into a kind of slurry. Buildings, statues, and entire temple complexes collapsed and sank into the mud. A place that once hosted thousands of worshippers disappeared beneath the waters, sealed by silt and sediment. This sealing effect preserved the city remarkably well. Instead of being eroded, looted, or repurposed, the ruins lay undisturbed for more than 1,000 years. The quartzite Sphinx, toppled violently during the quake, survived because the mud that swallowed it also protected it. The ritual objects scattered on temple floors remained where they fell. Even delicate items that could never survive on land were preserved in the underwater silence. What makes the discovery even more fascinating is the nature of Canopus itself. While the inner sanctuaries of the temple complex held solemn ceremonies, the outer city was known for its revelry. Ancient authors described Canopus as a place where music, dance, and celebration filled the canals. It was a destination for pilgrims and travelers, a place where the boundaries between sacred and profane blurred. Now, beneath the waves, those worlds lie side by side, the solemn and the joyous, the sacred and the chaotic, all of it frozen in the moment of destruction. The quartzite Sphinx, likely brought to Canopus from an earlier site, symbolized authority, tradition, and connection to the ancient kings. Its presence suggests that the priests wanted the city to have a lineage reaching back to Egypt's golden age. By placing such a monument near their temple, they tied their rituals to a deeper time, reminding worshippers of the divine kingship that once united Egypt. The discovery of this Sphinx also raises questions about cultural memory. If Canopus used heirloom monuments to enrich its identity, what other heirlooms may lie beneath the delta and the Mediterranean coast throughout Egyptian history? Temples were rebuilt, relocated, and renovated, often incorporating older artifacts for symbolic power. The destruction of Canopus preserved not only its physical structures, but also its layers of cultural inheritance. The underwater ruins also provide insights into life during the late periods of Egyptian history. By analysing the architecture, tools, and ritual objects, archaeologists can reconstruct social and religious life with unprecedented clarity. They can identify which workshops produced certain items, which priestly households performed certain rites, and how trade flowed into and out of the city. Yet despite the wealth of information preserved underwater, much remains hidden. The delta is vast, and shifting sands continue to conceal as much as they reveal. For every sphinx discovered, there may be another yet to be found. For every temple uncovered, another may lie buried beneath layers of silt. The sea guards many secrets, and Canopus is only one window into a broader world of submerged history. The pattern echoed here is similar to what we have seen in earlier parts of this documentary. Landscapes change, cities sink, people adapt, migrate, and rebuild. Innovation grows in unexpected places, whether in the jungles of the Amazon or the river deltas of Egypt, and throughout it all, human creativity persists. But if the sea can preserve an entire city, it can also preserve a single ship. And in 2025, off the coast of France, researchers discovered a vessel resting upright on the seafloor, untouched since the 16th century. A different kind of time capsule, a world of Renaissance trade, completely sealed by depth and darkness. From the flooded ruins of Canopus, we now descend even deeper into the ocean, where the silence of the abyss guards the most intact shipwreck ever found in French territorial waters. In the deep waters off the coast of southern France, the Mediterranean becomes a different world. Sunlight fades within minutes. The surface noise disappears. Pressure builds. The sea grows cold, still, and silent. It is an environment where almost nothing survives for long. Wood decays, metal corrodes, shipworms, the great destroyers of maritime history, bore through every organic surface. Most shipwrecks reaching the seafloor are reduced to bones and fragments within decades. That is why the discovery of Camarat 4 stunned archaeologists. During a recent deepwater survey, the French Navy detected an unusual shape on the seafloor. At first, it appeared as nothing more than a faint sonar signature, blurry and indistinct. But when an autonomous underwater vehicle descended and illuminated the object with high-intensity lights, the truth appeared out of the darkness. It was a ship. An intact wooden merchant vessel from the 16th century, resting upright on the seabed as if still underway. The hull remained largely coherent. The ribs, planks, and stern structure were visible in astonishing detail. Even collapsed masts lay preserved on the sediment like fallen pillars from an ancient ruin. Nothing about the scene looked accidental. It looked suspended, as if time itself had paused at the moment the ship sank. The depth, more than anything, saved it. Below certain thresholds, shipworms become far less active. The cold temperatures slow microbial decay. The absence of currents reduces movement and erosion. Combined, these factors create a rare environment where wood can survive for centuries. Camarat 4 settled into this quiet abyss and remained untouched, a closed chapter of maritime history waiting to be opened. From early analysis, the ship measured somewhere between 60 and 80 feet long, the standard size for Mediterranean merchant vessels transporting cargo between France, Italy, Spain, and the Ottoman ports. These ships formed the backbone of 16th century commerce. They carried grain from Provence, wine from Catalonia, textiles from Florence, ceramics from Valencia, and the everyday necessities of life along the vast sea trade routes. The location of the wreck, off the coast of Ramatuelle, placed it along one of the busiest commercial corridors of the late Renaissance. Yet its depth raised a question. How did a ship designed to hug the coast end up so far offshore and so deep beneath the surface? The answer may lie in weather. The region is known for the Mistral, a fierce northwesterly wind that roars down from the Alps with little warning. The Mistral can transform the Mediterranean from calm to deadly in minutes. For a merchant ship caught in its path, the wind could push it off course, capsize it, or drive it beyond safe waters. Camarat 4 may have succumbed to such a storm, pushed far from shore and overwhelmed by the violence of the sea. But while the cause of its sinking is still uncertain, the value of the discovery is not. Camarat 4 is pristine. No looters ever reached it. No anchors or fishing nets scraped across its hull. The cargo hold, sealed by depth, likely still contains everything the ship carried on its final voyage. Amphoras of wine or oil may remain stacked against the timber walls. Bales of wool or silk, though fragile, might still survive in some form. Metal ingots, ceramic wares, and trade goods from across the Mediterranean world are probably preserved in the same places they were when the crew abandoned ship. Even personal objects may remain undisturbed. Clay pipes used by sailors, wooden utensils, leather shoes, tools, coins. The simple, intimate belongings that almost never survive in shallow wrecks could still be present, resting exactly where they fell 5 centuries ago. Recovering the cargo will require delicate work. The depth demands specialized submersibles, robotic arms, and carefully coordinated operations. Each movement must be precise to avoid damaging the structure or disturbing fragile artifacts. Yet the potential insight is worth the challenge. Camarat 4 offers something few shipwrecks can: a complete snapshot of Renaissance maritime life. Through its cargo, archaeologists can reconstruct economic networks. Through its structure, they can refine understanding of shipbuilding techniques in the late 15th and early 16th centuries. Through its equipment, they can study navigation, trade routines, and the daily realities of Mediterranean commerce. And through its personal objects, they can glimpse the human dimension of sailors who lived and worked on the sea during a dynamic, transitional era. This discovery also contributes to a broader theme emerging across 2025. Large-scale history often focuses on empires, kings, and monumental architecture. But many of the most revealing stories come from ordinary lives, preserved in extraordinary circumstances. The Roman woman sealed in her sarcophagus, the Maya engineers who shaped water flow centuries before the classical period, the Bronze Age metallurgists who refined alloys on the open steppe, and now the sailors of a Renaissance merchant ship whose world was preserved by darkness and depth. Camarat 4 is not just a shipwreck, it is a time capsule suspended between past and present, between tragedy and discovery. Its silence also mirrors a different kind of silence found much farther from the sea, in a rock shelter on the Australian continent. There, archaeologists uncovered something that almost never survives: fragile fibres, nets, and woven materials dating back 17 centuries. While a shipwreck survives because the sea protects it, these fibres survived because a cave shielded them from the elements for millennia. From the abyss of the Mediterranean, we now travel to the Australian interior, where a completely different kind of preservation revealed technologies and traditions passed down across 80 generations. In archaeology, the survival of delicate objects is almost a contradiction. Stone tools endure. Pottery sherds last. Bones, if protected, can remain for thousands of years. But fibres woven by human hands almost never survive. They decay quickly in humidity, crumble in heat, and vanish in sunlight. Most of the world's ancient textiles, nets, bags, and cords are long gone, leaving only indirect traces of how people once lived their everyday lives. That is why the discoveries at Windmill Way in 2025 were so extraordinary. Deep inside a rock shelter in northern Australia, a team of archaeologists uncovered a collection of fibre artefacts dating back more than 1,700 years. These fibres survived because the shelter created a unique microenvironment, shielded from rain, sun, wind, and fluctuating temperatures. Layer after layer of sediment had covered the floor, sealing in scraps of a world that would otherwise have disappeared. What they found was not a single object, but an entire toolkit of daily life. There were fragments of nets used for fishing, twisted lengths of cord that once held tools together, woven bags used for gathering yams or carrying personal belongings, fiber bindings crafted to secure spear points to wooden shafts, techniques that were not merely functional but refined, stable, and taught from generation to generation. When researchers examined the fibers under magnification, they saw something remarkable. The same weaving techniques used by the people who lived in this rock shelter 17 centuries ago are still used today by the local indigenous community, the Kukacha. The threads connected more than 80 generations of knowledge, passed down without interruption. The find was not just archaeology, it was continuity, a direct line between past and present. The range of artifacts revealed a sophisticated understanding of natural materials. The makers selected specific plant fibers for strength, flexibility, and durability. They twisted strands into multiply cords, controlling tension and direction. They designed nets with mesh sizes suited to particular fish. They fashioned bags tight enough to contain small seeds, but strong enough to carry heavy loads. Each item reflected a deep knowledge of environment, behavior, and need. Such technologies rarely make it into the archaeological record because of their fragility. But without fibers, stone tools are only half the story. A spearhead is useless without the lashings that attach it to a shaft. A cutting tool is limited without a woven bag to carry it. Fibers transform tools into systems. They enable mobility, storage, transportation, and efficiency. The Windmill Way discoveries therefore rewrote an entire chapter of Australian prehistory, not by revealing something people did not know, but by preserving proof of what indigenous communities had long said. Their technologies, traditions, and knowledge systems are ancient and continuous, not recent inventions or broken fragments. Yet this continuity also carried a shadow. The stratigraphic layers revealed that the site had been used for nearly 2,000 years, until its sudden abandonment in the year 1874. Among the final layers, researchers found two foreign objects, a piece of hooked wire and a strip of red European cloth. These were not artifacts of local manufacture. They represented the arrival of outsiders, most likely associated with the Palmer River gold rush. That rush brought thousands of miners into the region, along with violence, disease, and displacement. The presence of the European objects, found among unfinished nets and abandoned bags, suggests the community left the shelter abruptly. The woven fibers froze that moment in time. Tools still lay where they were being made. Bags were dropped mid-use. The quiet continuity of centuries was interrupted in an instant. Windmill Way therefore tells two stories. The first is one of resilience, connection, and deep time. The second is one of disruption, loss, and forced departure. Both stories are now locked in the fibers themselves. The discovery also underscores a growing recognition in archaeology that intangible knowledge, such as weaving, binding, crafting, or storytelling, is often older, more stable, and more widespread than the material remains suggest. When fibers survive, they reveal the complexity of societies that outsiders too often dismissed as simple or primitive. These artifacts reinforce the idea that innovation is not limited to monumental architecture or metal tools. It can be found in the twist of a cord, the structure of a net, or the pattern of a woven bag. These designs are technologies of survival, shaped by thousands of years of adaptation to a demanding environment. And as with many of the discoveries from 2025, Windmill Way highlights the theme of preservation by accident. The rock shelter happened to shield these fibers long enough for modern researchers to find them. Had the cave been more exposed, or had the sediments shifted differently, or had the region experienced more moisture, the fibers would have vanished entirely. Instead, they waited in the dark, layered beneath centuries of dust. But if the survival of threads is unlikely, the survival of entire rooms filled with artwork is even rarer. Windmill Way preserves delicate fibers that escape destruction, but in Italy, another discovery preserved something entirely different. an environment of luxury and deep cultural meaning. Across the world in Pompeii, archaeologists working in a previously unexplored sector uncovered a room that defied expectations. A chamber used for dining and ritual, its walls painted in a style unlike anything else found in the city. A room of myth, darkness, and symbolism, preserved beneath volcanic ash for nearly 2,000 years. From the woven fibres of Australia, we now travel to the shadowed interior of Pompeii's newly discovered Black Room, where art, story, and tragedy converge in a space untouched since the final day of the city. For nearly 300 years, archaeologists have been uncovering Pompeii room by room, restoring streets, cataloguing frescoes, and reconstructing lives interrupted by catastrophe. It is easy to imagine that nothing remains hidden, that every secret buried by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius has already been revealed. Yet during a recent excavation in a quiet sector known as Regio 9, researchers opened a doorway and stepped into a world no one expected. They discovered a banquet hall painted entirely black. The room was not large, but its effect was immediate and overwhelming. Walls coated in deep, glossy black plaster enclosed a space that seemed almost theatrical. Against this dark background, mythological scenes emerged with startling clarity. Figures from Greek legend hovered in vivid colours. Their bodies glowed as if suspended within the darkness. The contrast made every detail sharper, richer, and more dramatic than the typical red and yellow frescoes found elsewhere in Pompeii. The room was unlike any known dining space in the city. Most Roman banquet rooms were designed to be bright and inviting, decorated with lively colours and idyllic landscapes. But the Black Room served a different purpose. It was immersive, symbolic, mysterious. A space that made guests feel as though they were entering a world between myth and ritual. Along the walls, painters depicted scenes of divine encounters and heroic challenges. Orpheus playing his lyre, Hercules standing before the gods, Paris offering the golden apple. These images may have been chosen deliberately to spark conversation, reflection, and storytelling during meals. Banquets in the Roman world were not simply about food, they were acts of display, conversation, performance, and cultural identity. Every painting on the walls would have guided the mood of the evening, but the most striking element was the black pigment itself. Covering an entire room in black required extensive preparation and cost. Black pigments were expensive and difficult to produce on a large scale. They also demanded careful application to avoid uneven streaks or imperfections. Only wealthy patrons with refined tastes could commission such a room. Whoever lived in this house was not merely affluent, they were cultivating a particular kind of image. The floor of the chamber added to the effect. It was made of white mosaic tesserae arranged in geometric patterns, creating a sharp visual contrast with the dark walls. When oil lamps were placed around the room during a banquet, the flickering light would have danced off the mosaic surfaces and reflected softly onto the walls, creating an atmosphere somewhere between intimate and otherworldly. Near the entrance, excavators found traces of a triclinium, the 3 reclining couches used for Roman feasting. Guests would have lain comfortably while enjoying multiple courses, wine, and conversation. Every element of the room was designed to heighten sensory experience, from the visual drama of the frescoes to the acoustics created by smooth plastered surfaces. The Black Room also revealed something about Pompeii at the time of its destruction. The house in which it was found showed signs of renovation. Tools, plaster pots, and construction debris lay scattered across several rooms. The owners had been improving their home when Vesuvius erupted. They were investing in beauty, comfort, and cultural sophistication. Their lives were not defined by impending doom. They were caught in a moment of creativity, confidence, and ambition. The eruption froze all of that into silence. As excavators removed ash and debris, they found everyday objects still lying where they had been left: bowls, amphoras, lamps, and utensils. These domestic items contrasted sharply with the room's dramatic artistic style, reminding researchers that the house was part of a living city. Pompeii was not a museum, it was a home. The Black Room was a space where people gathered, laughed, argued, flirted, and shared meals. The suddenness of its preservation made the discovery all the more powerful. The level of artistry in the room also forces a re-evaluation of Roman painting during the 1st century AD. The skill required to produce such depth, shading, and contrast indicates that painters in Pompeii achieved innovations previously thought to belong to later periods of Roman art. The combination of black walls with mythological scenes may represent a unique local expression, or even a rising trend cut short by disaster. As with many discoveries in 2025, the Black Room challenges assumptions about what ancient people valued. It shows that aesthetics were not merely decorative, they were philosophical. These frescoes were chosen not only to impress guests, but to create an atmosphere of contemplation. Myth served as a mirror for human experience. Guests reclining in the Black Room were surrounded by stories of fate, desire, choice, and consequence. It was a theatrical space for examining life through the lens of legend. Yet the significance of the Black Room also lies in its emotional impact. It is a reminder of how quickly life can change, how beauty can be preserved by catastrophe, and how entire environments can vanish in a single afternoon only to reappear centuries later with an uncanny level of detail. The ash that destroyed Pompeii also protected it. Without that tragedy, rooms like this would have decayed long ago. The discovery connects to a pattern common to many of the finds in this documentary. Landscapes shift. Catastrophes reshape worlds. What disappears can sometimes return, and what remains can reveal more than anyone expected. Whether beneath seawater, volcanic ash, rainforest soil, or desert sand, the past waits for the right conditions to emerge. But while Pompeii offers an intimate look at everyday experiences interrupted by disaster, the next discovery shifts the focus back to monumental history. Not a room, not a house, but the resting place of a king long considered lost. A pharaoh overshadowed by the dramatic lives of those around him, yet central to the story of Egypt's 18th dynasty. From the quiet darkness of the Black Room, we now follow the trail to the rugged cliffs of the Western Desert, where archaeologists in 2025 uncovered the final resting place of a forgotten Egyptian ruler, Thutmose II. In the long line of Egypt's 18th dynasty, some rulers shine with unmistakable brilliance. Thutmose I, the warrior king who expanded Egypt into an empire. Hatshepsut, the queen who declared herself pharaoh and redefined power. Thutmose III, often called the Napoleon of Egypt, whose military campaigns transformed the ancient Near East. Yet hidden between these giants is a man whose memory faded into shadow, Thutmose II. His reign was short. His accomplishments were overshadowed. His legacy was eclipsed by the extraordinary figures around him, and for more than 3,000 years his tomb remained lost. In 2025 that changed. The discovery began far from the crowded paths of the Valley of the Kings. A joint Egyptian-British expedition followed a hypothesis that Thutmose II might have been buried not among the great pharaohs, but near the tombs of his family. The wives of Thutmose III had been found in the rugged ravines of Wadi Gabanat el Khurud, a desolate and seldom visited branch of the Western Cliffs. It was there, after years of clearing debris and enduring brutal desert heat, that archaeologists uncovered a rock-cut entrance sealed beneath millennia of stone. The tomb was catalogued as C4. At first the entrance confused the team. It lacked the grand corridors of later New Kingdom tombs. There were no sprawling chambers or elaborate architectural flourishes. Instead, a simple passage descended into darkness. But as they cleared the rubble and moved deeper inside, the evidence began to speak. Fragments of plaster clung to the walls, decorated with traces of blue and yellow pigment. These were the colours of the Book of the Amduat, the sacred text guiding the pharaoh through the 12 hours of the night. Even in fragments, the imagery was unmistakable. Stars painted across the ceiling, celestial boats crossing the underworld, snakes, guardians, and protective deities leading the king toward rebirth. These symbols revealed that the tomb was royal. The final confirmation came from a set of alabaster jars found near the burial chamber. Their surfaces were caked with dust, but when conservators cleaned them, the cartouche of Thutmose II appeared. The name of the forgotten king carved into stone had survived 3,000 years of silence. Inside the burial chamber, archaeologists found the shattered remains of a sarcophagus, likely destroyed by ancient looters. Yet despite the damage, the discovery was monumental. Until now, the mummy of Thutmose II, known to scholars, had been recovered from a royal cache at Deir el-Bahari in the 19th century. But his original tomb had never been found. It was a missing piece of Egypt's most storied dynasty. The architecture and decoration of the tomb also shed light on a transitional era in Egyptian royal burials. Thutmose II ruled at a time when tomb design was evolving rapidly. His burial chamber, while modest compared to later structures, showed clear attempts to integrate solar and underworld symbolism. This fusion reflected the growing importance of the sun god Ra and the enduring legacy of Osiris, the Lord of the Dead. The placement of the tomb, tucked deep into a harsh ravine far from the main valley, raises intriguing questions. Why was he buried here instead of alongside other kings? His tomb lies near queens and royal wives, suggesting strong ties to the family networks that surrounded Hatshepsut and Thutmose III. Some scholars speculate that political dynamics during his reign may have influenced burial decisions. Others believe the remote location was chosen precisely to protect the tomb from looters. The arid conditions of the desert helped preserve the structure. Storerooms contained fragments of funerary goods, pottery, and pieces of wooden furniture. Although looters removed much of the original treasure, enough remained to reconstruct aspects of the burial. Traces of resin and linen wrappings hinted at the embalming process. Remnants of pigment revealed the artistry once displayed on the walls. But perhaps the most important aspect of the discovery is what it reveals about Egypt's 18th dynasty itself. Thutmose II, long considered a minor figure, emerges as a bridge between powerful rulers. His reign, though short, was a key moment in the family's political consolidation. His marriage to Hatshepsut linked two branches of the royal line. His son, Thutmose III, would become one of the greatest pharaohs in history, and his burial speaks to the rituals, beliefs, and aspirations that shaped an era of transition. The tomb provides a tangible link to a man who existed in the margins of history. For centuries, his memory survived only through scattered inscriptions and mentions in later texts. Now, his resting place reconnects him to the world he once ruled. It restores his place in the dynasty's story. The discovery also contributes to a broader pattern emerging across 2025's archaeological revelations. Whether in the Amazon, the Aegean, or the Mediterranean, forgotten stories resurface when landscapes shift, technologies advance, and the past unexpectedly reveals itself. Some discoveries unveil entire cities, others expose single lives, rituals, or tombs. But all of them point toward the same truth. History is far larger, deeper, and more intricate than the fragments we have inherited. The tomb of Thutmose II reinforces this idea. A king overshadowed by legends was not lost. He was waiting. As remarkable as this discovery is, it is not the final piece of the puzzle. All of the year's findings, from drowned plains to sunken temples, from hidden cities to forgotten dwellings, share something subtle but unmistakable. They form a pattern, a larger story that only becomes clear when seen from above. From the quiet depths of an Egyptian tomb, We now move into the final part of this documentary, where all the threads converge. A synthesis that reveals not only what we found in 2025, but what it means for the story of humanity itself. When viewed separately, each discovery from 2025 is remarkable. A buried Roman life preserved by lead and stone, cities hidden beneath the Amazon canopy, an engineered canal system that rewrites the origins of Maya complexity, a Bronze Age city rising from the steppe, a sphinx slumbering beneath the waves, a Renaissance ship resting upright in the deep, a landscape beneath the Aegean Sea that should not exist, the fragile threads of ancient Australia, a banquet room preserved by volcanic catastrophe, the long-lost tomb of a forgotten king. But when viewed together, they reveal something deeper, something larger, something that does not appear in any textbook, timeline, or history lesson. They reveal a pattern that exposes a past we never expected. This pattern does not belong to a single region or civilization. It exists across continents, across time periods, and across environments as different as deserts, rainforests, deltas, and mountain rivers. It suggests that humanity's story is not a simple ascent from primitive beginnings to modern complexity. Instead, it is a mosaic composed of innovations, collapses, rediscoveries, and forgotten chapters. For decades, the dominant narrative held that complex civilization emerged only in a few select cradles: Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, China. But the discoveries of 2025 tell a broader story. They show that while these great river civilizations changed the world, they were not alone in their ingenuity. In the Amazon, people built vast urban networks long before Europeans arrived, shaping their environment with roads, terraces, canals, and agricultural fields that rivaled the complexity of old-world cities. Their work challenges the idea that rainforests limit human development, proving instead that innovation adapts to every ecosystem. In the Aegean, stone tools revealed that the world did not always look the way we assume it did. The map of the Mediterranean shifted dramatically at the end of the last ice age, erasing entire homelands and severing ancient connections. Human migration into Europe now appears far more fluid, continuous, and ancient than once believed. In the Maya lowlands, canals coated in stucco showed that hydraulic engineering existed centuries before the classical era. Astronomy, architecture, and political organization were already taking shape long before monumental pyramids were built. Early Maya society was not a precursor, but a foundation. In the steppe, a Bronze Age city demonstrated that nomadic cultures were far more versatile than assumed. They did not simply roam. They built when needed, forging seasonal urban centers tied to trade, metallurgy, and ceremony. The distinction between settled and nomadic life was not as rigid as historians once imagined. In Australia, fibers woven by indigenous hands linked 80 generations of knowledge, revealing a continuity of practice rarely visible in the archaeological record. These threads expose a world where tradition flows through time with remarkable stability, surviving until abruptly disrupted by colonization. In Pompeii, the Black Room preserved an aesthetic philosophy, a space designed to provoke reflection through myth and color. It reminds us that beauty, symbolism, and artistic experimentation were valued across all levels of Roman society. Underwater, Canopus preserved a ritual world frozen at the moment of disaster. Sacred objects lay undisturbed in temple ruins, revealing ceremonies once known only through texts. Disaster became preservation, and preservation became revelation. At the bottom of the Mediterranean, a shipwreck from the 16th century rested intact, untouched. Its cargo, its tools, and the personal objects of its crew remained sealed by depth, offering a portrait of everyday life in a period of explosive global change. And in Egypt's western cliffs, the tomb of Thutmose II reaffirmed that forgotten kings still wait in the shadows. His resting place, lost for millennia, completes a missing chapter in one of the world's most iconic dynasties. Taken together, these discoveries force a reconsideration of what it means to be human. They show that complexity is not rare. It is ancient. It is global. It emerges wherever people confront their environment and innovate to survive. They also reveal the fragility of knowledge. Cities vanish beneath trees. Lands drown beneath seas. Rituals fade when sanctuaries collapse. Textiles disintegrate. Histories are carried orally for generations until disrupted by forces far beyond their control. The past is not gone because it never existed, but because environments, disasters, and time obscured it. Yet traces remain. Sometimes they appear as stone foundations beneath a forest, sometimes as pigment on a wall, sometimes as a sealed artifact, a preserved thread, a carved symbol, or a buried bone. Each discovery is a doorway into a world we did not know was there. But if this single year can produce evidence of forgotten urban networks, submerged landscapes, advanced engineering, ancient rituals, and lost individuals, then the true scale of our unknown past must be far larger. How many cities lie beneath jungles? What stories of migration lie beneath drowned valleys? How many rituals are buried beneath collapsed temples? How many people, like the Roman woman in her lead-sealed coffin, remain waiting in the earth for their stories to be told? How many rulers, like Thutmose II, still rest in undiscovered tombs? The past is not a fixed timeline. It is a shifting terrain, constantly reshaped by new evidence. The discoveries of 2025 show that history is full of blind spots. They show that knowledge can survive in unexpected places, and they show that every assumption about where complexity begins and ends must be reconsidered. Perhaps the most important lesson from this year is that human ingenuity does not belong to a single era or region. It belongs to all of us. Across continents, across cultures, across thousands of years, people have observed, adapted, created, and imagined. They built systems to survive the world as they found it, and they left clues, often unintentionally, that now allow us to glimpse who they were. As we move forward, new technologies will continue to uncover hidden chapters. LiDAR will reveal more cities under forests. Subsurface scanners will detect more burials sealed beneath desert stone. Underwater drones will map plains that once connected continents, and every discovery will add another piece to the mosaic. The past we expected was small, linear, and limited. The past we are uncovering is vast, complex, and connected. And before we close this chapter, if you would like to support this journey into the forgotten corners of our past, feel free to like the video, share it with someone who enjoys mysteries, and subscribe if you wish to explore more. Your presence here truly matters, and if you are listening late at night, I hope this story carries you gently toward a peaceful rest. This is not the end of the story. It is only the beginning. If 1 year can expose so much forgotten history, imagine what the next discoveries will reveal.